I'm gonna let everyone in. Enrique, did you want to take over today or did you want to watch today?
Yeah, I'm gonna try it and see what happens.
Okay, very well.
Okay,
You're
I'll
being
put up the
admitted.
slide.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's class. We're going to be addressing matters that pertain actually to conservators that are already a conservator, and we're going to be talking about things that are very, very important for you to know in terms of your rights and resources as a conservator. It's really hard to be a new conservator and be expected to know what the laws are and how to interface with all the different resources, and you don't even know where those resources are. So this is really set up for that. So we want to thank NAMI Urban Los Angeles for putting this program together. It's just so awesome that they're doing this. I'm so impressed with them. Basically, we're going to be Gail and myself presenting, and Gail, is there someone else with us today? I think there is. I haven't had a chance to review it.
No. The
Okay.
public guardian, we always have a public guardian here because sometimes they answer questions that Jim and I we don't know. And we don't know everything. But today, the person that was supposed to be here can't make it. So it's just what it is. So you're just stuck with Jim and I.
There you go. Anyway, welcome aboard, and I want to let everybody know that the meeting's being recorded. So when the opportunity comes up for you to ask a question at the end of this, just please don't use names because of the HIPAA laws involved, and this is a NAMI presentation, so we're not allowed. We don't want names to be used in the presentation. That being said, let's move forward and start with the first slide. Araceli, please. Again, this is brought on by NAMI Urban Los Angeles. Myself and Gail are your two hosts for today in NAMI Urban LA. And I think next slide. We want to thank Maddie Cobbs, who is such a support for us in doing this, along with Harold Turner, who is their president for NAMI Urban Los Angeles. And the behind the scenes captain, that's sitting in the driver's seat of the presentation. And that's, A. Sorelli, who's our webmaster.
And also Enrico. Enrico's going to be doing it too, but we didn't get his name up there because I didn't know
Gail, for that. Great. So Enrico, thank you for all your help too. So basically, I think it's imperative that you understand that Gail and we are not attorneys. We cannot answer any legal questions. So please don't ask them. We have talked to so many people along the way. We've talked to psychiatrists. We've talked to all the different agencies that deal with mental health and so forth and conservatorship. And we're sharing what we've learned with you. And so we're trying to help you to have the best, outcome for your efforts to get a LPS conservatorship for your loved one. They're not easy to get. And what we're going to show you is going to help you in terms of knowing how to navigate the various resources. We're going to go through some of those today. So basically, we're making suggestions on how you can best pursue your efforts to obtain a conservatorship, but basically, you also have to use some of your own intuition in how you go forward. So we're going to present some of the laws that should help guide your decisions, and most of the information presented pertains to Los Angeles County. Don't forget, though, conservatorships are controlled by the same law throughout the entire state of California. So what we're saying today applies to every county in the state of California. Every county will interpret the laws a little bit as they understand it, a little bit differently from one another, but it's the same law. These are some tips that you'll want to keep in mind when you're actually acting as a private conservator for your loved one or your conservatee. Always refer to yourself, whether it's the hospital and they know who you are, they know you're the parent. Always refer to yourself as the conservator for, and then your son or daughter's name. Also, it's so imperative that you take if you haven't already, take the free NAMI to family classes. They will really help you to understand mental health issues and challenges themselves. And NAMI Urban Los Angeles does a bang up job of that. They are an incredible resource. They have a lot of resources on their website as well. So definitely want to take advantage of that. One of the things that Gail has always brought up is how important journals are, and I couldn't agree with her, more. One journal is going to be on the medications, with the concept that you're going to keep track of what medications your conservatee is on, and then your observations on that. Gee, they switched to this particular medication, this new psychotropic. It seems like it's not really effective. Maybe at some point in time you say, well, I see some improvements here. Date that, write it down. This is going to travel forward with you over time, because mental health doesn't go away. It ebbs and wanes, but it doesn't go away. And it's going to be for your lifetime and their lifetime. So if you down the road should end up having a new psychiatrist, or you're in a hospital that doesn't know your background or their conservatee's background, this will help you to really share with them the best medications for your loved one to be on, whoever you're speaking to. So, and then get involved. Gosh, you want to get involved with NAMI Urban Los Angeles, or whatever NAMI you live close to. Get involved with your legislators. Ask for their support on different laws that are being presented out there that you feel are of value. Just sitting back and being a pacifist is the worst thing you can do, and probably one of the most frustrating things you can do. When you get involved, you're going to feel like you're actually making a difference, and you're absolutely going to be helping your loved one in that. Next slide, please.
And vote. Know who you're voting for.
Absolutely vote.
Okay. Jim, I can't see whether it's yours or mine. So if it's mine, you're going to have to let me know.
I can't see it either. There's a little pin or something there, an arrow.
Something on it. I don't know what that is.
I don't know what it is.
Enrico, I think you're doing the slides, so you might have to say Jim, Gail, whatever. Okay.
We can't see it.
LPS Conservatorship. It's the term used in California for involuntary mental health treatment. Different states use different terms. If somebody's talking to you about doing a guardianship, do not do it. I mean, you can if you want, but I would not, because the LPS conservatorship, you are not liable for anything your patient does, any money they spend, anything at all like that. If you have a guardianship, you are liable. If they drove the car and had an accident, you can be sued also. So you don't want a guardianship, you want that LPS conservatorship. You're not liable civilly or criminally for anything they do or don't do. We'll talk about that later. It was named after some legislators, the Latterman, Petrus, and Short, in 1974. They have now changed a lot of those laws, including the definition for gravely disabled. But we're going to go by the original one that they have, because it will not take place in Los Angeles or Orange County until 2016, and we don't want to confuse you. The laws are located in the California Welfare and Institutions Code 5200. When you have insomnia, pull it out and read it. It'll put you right to sleep. They are over 50 years old, and they do not reflect current scientific research. For instance, medications have improved and gotten better. Treatments have gotten better. They're working right now on a blood test where they can tell if you're going to have schizophrenia or if you do. And they've been using it, and it's pretty successful. And also what medications would probably be better for you if you have schizophrenia. But that's still in the research phase, so it hasn't really come forward any more than that. Next slide. If you are the conservator and your loved one's conserved, there's a booklet that should be given to the conservators if you're in court. If you're not in court, you can find it on the internet, and that's the site that you can get it on. A good thing to pull up and to get, it gives you a lot of information, a lot of forms to be filled out, so it will make a difference. Next slide. The essence of your conservatorship is to mandate medication. Enrico, did you get rid of that thing at the bottom? that little arrow thing or whatever it is. Yeah, if we can keep that off, that would be great. Okay. Um, Basically, certain things are going to be taken away from your loved one, and you always have people say, they take away their rights. They temporarily suspend their rights, certain rights, but they get them back. The only one that is not taken away is the right to refuse medication. That is the essence of your conservatorship. That's what makes that brain be able to think, be in touch with reality, and to get their life back together. Okay, next one, next slide. Norwalk, the mental health court is located in Department A and B, we found out yesterday. The address is in Norwalk, and there's two judges, Scott Heron, who is awesome, and I understand not Scott, but Renee Gilbertson is also good. They both handle AOT cases, LPS, and care court, which is a lot of things for them to handle. Next slide. The types of conservatorship. In the state of California, you have the LPS conservatorship of the person. It is the treating doctor who initiates the conservatorship of the person. And most of the information that we're referring to in the class will pertain to the conservatorship of the person. But we do discuss the conservatorship of the estate. If you need it of the estate, that's like if they have bills to be paid, criminal cases to be taken care of, school loans, anything at all that needs to be taken care of, then you want to ask the public guardian, not the doctor, to help you to get the LPS of the estate. And that is granted through the courts. If you are granted the LPS of the person, then you find out afterwards, geez, I really need the estate. You can always go back to the court, to the mental health court, and request that you be given the LPS of the estate. Next slide.
So succession of conservatorship. The conservatorship can be changed from the public guardian to responsible person anytime during the year. It can be changed from the responsible person, as Gail just referenced to the public guardian any time of the year, or back and forth. Here in Orange County, where I am, that can flip-flop back and forth if as needed. It's not that you want to do that, but if something should come up and you're unable to serve in that capacity, they will step in to help you. And if you need it back later, they'll be glad to return that to you. For Los Angeles, you would want to write a letter to the Norwalk Mental Health Court, Department A, for change in succession. The court honors the conservatee's request. And so they will comply with you and help you, whether it's you want them to permanently handle that, or if that's just something that you need to have for a certain time frame. Next slide.
Wait, let me just say something.
Sure.
If the conservatee says, I don't want my parents to be conservator, then the judge honors what the conservatee says and they'll give it to the public guardian.
Right.
But don't worry about that too much, because a lot of times the patients, after having the public guardian be the conservator, the public guardian handles like 50 cases plus. It could be 70, 75 sometimes per person. And that's a lot. And you will find if you are the conservator, it's a lot of work. So they don't always get back to the conservatee, and they're not always able to help them and do the things that they want. So it's not uncommon for a conservatee down the road to say, will you be my conservator? And we had one kid who didn't want his parents to be the conservator. 2 weeks later, he said, if you're nice to me, you can be my conservator. And the mom says, I don't want to be your conservator. You're not nice to us. Another 2 weeks later, I'll be real nice to you if you'll be my conservator. So they do, and they do change their mind, and they hear from other people as they get on the road to recovery. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
That's okay. As a conservator, if this is your first time being a conservator, or this is the first time that you've requested a conservatorship and it's been granted, you're tongue-tied. Worse than yesterday even, so forgive me. You absolutely want to decide whether you want to be the conservator for your loved one or whether you want the public guardian to be the conservator of your loved one. So if you allow the public guardian to be the conservator in this case, the pros, the upshot of that is that they'll be able to place a person in a state-approved facility. Also, there's less stress for the family member. You know, it never seems to fail that somebody on conservatorship is always wanting something. They feel that, hey, I have money coming in through Social Security or something. I need you to buy this for me, and it may be something you don't want to buy them. So there's a lot of stress involved. The negative or the downside is that if you allow the public guardian's office to be the conservator, then you'll have less involvement with the recovery process. You won't be able to have any input on the medications or make decisions, I should say. You can always work with a doctor in terms of letting them know the history of medications and what's worked in the past, but you won't be able to make any decisions as to what medications that doctor chooses to utilize to treat your loved one with. So you want to work also closely to establish a relationship with the public guardian's office and share that type of information with them as well. What sort of things has best worked for your conservatee? What are their needs? Some of the problems that you've had, or how to get around them, that type of thing. You just want to work with them in terms of providing all the information possible to keep them in a position where they will best be able to serve your conservatee, or their conservatee at that point, I should say.
Yeah.
Next slide.
I'd like to just add one thing. When you're working with the public guardian or the doctor, if you're the conservator, if you can work through the social worker or with the public guardian, email them. They appreciate that, because if they're out on the road, they're not taking phone calls. When you talk with them on the phone, bullet what you have to ask or what you have to say. Stay to it. Don't get into a whole saga of problems. They don't have the time, and they don't want to be rude, but they will not be taking your calls after that, because they don't have time to spend a half an hour with you. Ask the questions, bam, 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 done. Thank you, goodbye. That got it. Okay, next slide.
Okay. Okay, there we go. That's it. I think that's mine, or
I
I
don't
can't
know.
tell.
Enrico, can you fix that again?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So I guess this is mine, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't know.
So anyway, as a conservator, the pros are that you'll be able to contact the doctor. You can have a conversation with that doctor. You can share what medications have been working in the past. You have the authority to tell the doctor that any medications that they're prescribing are not appropriate, and you can prevent that doctor from actually prescribing that medications. You have that much authority. However, if you don't have a really strong, legitimate reason for saying that you don't want your family member to be put onto a specific medication, there better be a really, really good reason for that, such as Haldol is oftentimes something that can cause, in some people anyway, cause their tongue to swell and actually start choking off their airways. Doctors need to know that and say, doctor, I want to work with you in regards to the medication that you would like to put my son or my daughter on, but I want you to know that she seems to have an allergic reaction to that specific medication. We've had problems. It's been, threatening her airways and so forth. Please let's talk about maybe an alternative. Always want to work with the doctor, not just cut them off, because they'll take you to court and get the judge to actually remove the conservatorship from you, and they'll take it over at the public guardian's office. The other thing too is that if you're the conservator, they're going to manipulate you. They're going to want you to buy things. They're going to want you to do things that in your best judgment that's not right, and then you have to say no, and then they get upset at you, and it's really, really a lot to deal with sometimes. You have to make that decision if it's right for you to be the conservator or not. The other negative to being a conservator is that the hospital will try to push you around and discharge the patient to a facility not appropriate for the level of treatment needed for recovery. And that's where you have rights as a conservator that allows you to go to any facility before they transfer your conservatee there and make certain that it's appropriate for their level of care and their needs. If they are co-occurring with a substance abuse problem, you sure don't want to have your conservatee in a neighborhood where they're going to be exposed to that. You know, if they are allowed to go on buddy walks out of the hospital, as some of our hospitals allow, you wouldn't want them to walk past, you know, a marijuana head shop. So also you should need to ask lots of questions as to what is their philosophy of treatment? Is it co-ed? Is it all male, female? What is their treatment regimens? Go there, look at the facility. Is it clean? I mean, just really scope it out, make sure that their treatment is going to be appropriate for your loved one. Anything, Gail? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, just keep in mind, none of these facilities are great.
No,
So, I mean, it's just what it is, but have your list of questions ready to go when you go there. And it's, you want to know, do you have direct contact with the doctor when needed? Not all the time, but when you need it. Sex, you don't want to be a grandparent when they get out. So you want to know what their philosophy is on sex. Do they have family group meetings where a group meeting with your loved one, the clinician, the doctor, whatever? How often do they do that? And do they do that? So that you're going to know what's going on and be sure they know that you are the conservator. When you sign that contract, when the person's put into like an IMD or any facility, you write on there, we'll talk about it later, and Jim has a good way on doing it, that as conservator, they cannot transport, change medication, or treatment without your expressed written permission. That is extremely important because they're assuming you're ignorant. You're not going to be ignorant after this class. And you let them know this is the law. And this is, I expect to have notification before any change is done for my loved one. All right, next slide.
Very quickly, I just want to add to that, Gail, that our son was in the one of the Anaheim hospitals, and I had gone in there personally and handed their emergency room the conservatorship papers. And the very next day, actually that night, they transported him out to a Los Angeles facility that I knew was not a very good facility. I made them take him back. Like next day I was all over them and described the person that I had handed the papers to, and they said, "Oh my gosh, thank you for educating us." No, they know what the laws are. They simply didn't think that I did. So stand your ground. Next slide.
And that's why keeping those 2 journals, everybody you talk to, even though it seems insignificant, including Jim and I, put down the contact information, the date, the name, and everything. That paper, that journal you have will solve a lot of problems for you. But if you call either one of us and say, well, this hospital said that, well, who in the hospital said that? You have to know. So everybody you talk to, you put down who you talked to and what they had to say. And sometimes you can repeat it back to them. Okay, what you are telling me is, am I understanding that correctly? And they'll change their tune too real quick. Okay, next slide.
So do you as a conservator, a private conservator, have liability? You've just checked your conservatee into a hospital and there's a bill to be paid. Are you going to be handed that bill if there's extra services or in any sort of the treatment facilities that you might encounter? Can you be physically liable? If they do damage to anything, are you liable? So per California law, the Welfare Institution Code, that's the W and the W&I code that you're seeing on the screen, it states that you are not by law liable either civilly or criminally for anything the conservatee may or may not do. You are not financially responsible for the conservatee's debts. That's critically important. One of the suggestions I will pass on regarding that is that our son did in fact do some damage to one of the board cares that he was in, and I didn't want that to, they discharged him out, and I had to find another place for him. They gave me a 30-day notice. That being said, I made sure that the damages were covered because I did not want that to come around and bite us. I don't want them running around the county saying, "Oh, this individual did all of this damage and we got burned for the cost of that." So, use your discretion, but you are not legally responsible for that. Next slide. So the rights and responsibilities of the LPS conservators are that you have the power to approve or disapprove all medications, treatment, and placement. Remember that. You can talk about what medications are not appropriate with the doctor. Make sure you work with the doctor and he understands why. Better be a concrete, good, solid reason as to why they can't have it. The treatment center, again, you don't want that someplace that is inappropriate or you feel that is not going to be the best placement for your son or daughter. All of these kind of things. And what is the treatment regimens? These are things that you have complete approval of or disapproval of. Next slide.
Let me just mention on the medications, there's some doctors that will write, 5 psychotropic medications. Which one is working? You don't know. Your powers, and this is really a powerful thing, is to approve or disapprove treatment, placement, and medication. And when these doctors write these psychotropic medications for all these medications, you can say no. And you want to know which one is working, at what dosage, and if it doesn't work, then try another one. It is trial and error at this time for finding out what medication works for your loved one. So don't let them try and pull the wool over your eyes. You have a tremendous power, but you want to use it diplomatically. Okay. Conservators have the right to speak directly with the treating doctor. You don't do it all the time because they're really busy and they won't appreciate that. But when you have to, then you have that right. And a lot of facilities will say, well, the doctor doesn't talk to conservators. Oh, no, that is the law, and they will be talking with you. So in LA, we have a contact that we can contact, and they call over there and they straighten them out. You have the right to apply for SSI, SSDI, which is disability income, Medi-Cal, Medicare, and VA benefits. You also, a lot of people will tell you, well, you can't have private insurance in these other ones. You have to get rid of your private insurance. That is not true. And so the more the merrier, keep it all. Okay, next slide. Unless Jim wanted
a good example of that, a good example of not having private insurance. If you cancel out if you put your son or daughter into a facility that requires private insurance and you have them on Medicare and you cancel the Medicare and put them into that facility and then they come out later, you're going to be financially penalized by Medicare for doing that. Mm-hmm. So what do you do? In a case like that, you would actually take out a Medicare Advantage plan. And primarily the private insurance company like Blue Shield, Blue Cross is the primary insurance company. And whoever receives payment from them, even though it's a Medicare Advantage plan, they do not have to sign up for Medicare or anything else. They're going to deal directly with the private insurance company. And that's the best way to deal with that. When your loved one then changes yet again, maybe go from a care center back to a board and care, then you can flip it back to straight Medicare if that's in your favor, because there aren't any co-pays as there are with the Medicare Advantage plans.
Yeah,
just throw that up.
Can you change, like when they have that time in November, December, whatever? Can you change there at that time without any penalties?
Yeah, I'm not real clear on that. I'm not the expert, but I do know that if they are Medi-Medi, they can flip back and forth anytime they want to as it is needed. You don't have to wait for a certain time period or time frame to change.
Okay. All right. And that's what he's talking about, flipping back and forth. You can assign your Medi-Cal, Medicare, or just Medi-Cal to like Kaiser Permanente, Blue Shield, whatever. You can assign that. And because it's mental health, they pretty much allow you to assign it anytime during the year. Other people, it would have to be during that time frame in November, December, whatever that time frame is.
Right.
Okay. The California Welfare and Institutions Code 5358.5. This is a very important law. As conservator, you have the right to hospitalize your loved one when you deem it's necessary, not when they've decompensated so much that they're harmed to self, harm to others, or gravely disabled. And if I can make a strong suggestion, I get a little irritated when people call me, their loved ones under a conservatorship, haven't taken their meds for 6 months. Why did you have a conservatorship if you're not going to mandate that they do that medication? You're waiting 6 months. Where's their recovery? If you are the conservator, your goal and your power is to keep them on the road to recovery. So if they go off their medicine for about a week, you get them back in the hospital. The hospital is the only place that can mandate and give them medication against their will. If they're in an IMD or board care, they can't do it there. They have to go back to the hospital. There is a law, and it's in that pamphlet, the Guide for Conservators. If you need that, it's on the website with NAMI Urban LA, or you can email me or Jim, and we'll send it directly to you, so you'll have it on your iPad or computer or whatever. But when you deem it's necessary, the court says they are gravely disabled. That's it. That's the requirement for this. And if somebody tries to say, well, we have to evaluate them, and if they don't meet criteria, no, you are now in contempt of court. You have to go to court and have the court say they are no longer gravely disabled. You can't do that. The court said they're gravely disabled. That's why you have this law. So don't wait for them to decompensate, because what is happening, a lot of police, Orange County, and we are having the problem in LA County, but they're changing it. They don't want to put their hands on it. So the sicker they get, or hands on the person, the sicker they get, the more they're going to fight the police to get on the gurney, go to the hospital or whatever. But if they've only been off the medication for a week, 10 days, you can't get them back on. They are bad, but they're not that bad. And even if they haven't started decompensating, you can still get them to the hospital. The hospital can force the meds, and usually you only have to do this once. They kind of get the message after that. But if it's quick, if you do it early enough, usually the hospital just gives them the meds. They're fine. They can leave. Or they might need a little R&R for the weekend. That's okay too. The longer you wait, the longer they're in the hospital. So don't wait. If you're having problems, if you call the police are not attorneys. They don't know this law. So you can call and talk to Miriam Brown. She's the deputy for emergency outreach and triage. This is in Los Angeles now. And she knows the law, and she has teams that can go out and get them on the road to recovery. Now, the problem with Miriam Brown, she's always in meetings, and trying to get her to call you back is a little difficult. But we have somebody else, Diana Hammond. Write this number down. She's the supervisor of the SMART team, and she knows the laws. And right now she's working with the police department that when they have what they call roll call and they're talking to them, if you have that conservatorship paper and you show it to the police, but you want to work with Diana because she'll make sure the right team goes out there. They know it's a fiduciary, whatever she said, but where they have to take them to the hospital. And she understands that law. She works with it, and she is making it happen. So she's really, she's pretty sharp, and she's a nurse too. So she really knows what's going on, but give her a call. that law is vital to getting the person in the hospital. Jim, do you want to
Now,
add anything for Orange
yes.
County?
In Orange County, they don't work with it that way. And, as I said earlier, every county interprets the law a little bit differently. And this is probably an area that I should try to approach county council or the courts on. But I've been in this exact position where I know my family member. I know when they're decompensating or not decompensating. I know when they need to be hospitalized. And yet I've had the Orange County CAT team come out and say, well, no, he doesn't meet criteria. And I go, wait, the law says that I have the right to have him put into the hospital. I have that authority. And they said, yes, you do. So I went to the head of the CAT team at that time and had this conversation. And she stated that while I have that authority, it's like, then take him. Yes, I have the authority to take him and put him in the hospital. But now you're asking us to assist you. Well, if you're going to involve us in that, we have to do an assessment, because if we don't feel that he's going to meet criteria, hey, we don't want to get sued. We're not going to transport him unless we feel that he meets criteria. They don't feel that they are obligated by the law to transport. So yes, you're right. The law is very clear. We as conservators have the absolute authority to put our conservatees into the hospital. The problem is trying to convince the county sometime that they're also obligated to assist us in that. Having a hard time getting law enforcement agencies to assist us in that. So, yesterday we had a meeting or a little discussion about this towards the end. But this is a problem, and we're not out of the woods on this yet. But yes, you're right. We have that authority to put them in the hospital.
When you read the law, it says when you deem it necessary, you have the right to request police transport to a facility, to whatever facility they need. And that is your right. And whoever disagrees, like his person in Orange County, they are actually in contempt of court, because the criteria for being hospitalized, gravely disabled, harm to self and others, that's it. Or harm to self or harm to others. Those three things, the court has said they are gravely disabled. That's why that law was put in place. If we didn't have that law, why we even bother having a conservatorship? They say, I'm going off the medication. There's not a darn thing you can do. You can't do that. You need to have that law in place. So you got to fight for some things. When you have that law in hand, fight for it. All right, next slide.
I'm sorry. The California Welfare Institutions Code 5358.5 states that the conservatee by court decree is gravely disabled, that the conservator can request police transport to a hospital for treatment, and that the hospital is only place where medication can be forced. That's absolutely true. That's the only place where you can force somebody to take their medications, and the courts will not allow them to go off their medications. So that goes back to the previous slide. As conservator, you are authorized to detain and to treat ADT. So yeah. Here's the code 5358.5.
And there's a form for the ADT. So the public guardian uses that form, but we can also. All right, next slide. This is the ADT form. It basically, your name, rank, and serial number. So, and the powers that was granted to you when the conservatorship was given. So you've got it all right there. And in that guide for conservators, it's got the law spelled out specifically. Next slide. Ah, that's you, Jim. I know that one. CalAble.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to report. So CalAble is a government program that allows you to have a savings account for your conservatee without causing any problems of them having too much money on hand. You can go to CalAble. Here's their website. and you can sign up for that program. Basically, you'll set up a monthly payment that will go into an account that will accrue in value. If you have it invested, you can allow them to invest it for you. Or you know, anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked. I started to say something else. I'll stick to the slide. Anyway, the page lists the different disability related expenses that can be paid for without losing government funding. You can go to calable.california. You see the link there, but I think, Gail, this should be the same presentation as before. I believe the next slide has some of the areas that can be covered by these funds.
Right. I just want to say something on this. If your loved one is under SSDI, you don't have a problem. They can have money in the bank. It's not a problem. If they're under SSI, at no time allow more than $2,000 to show in that bank account. You get $2,001, chances are you will be audited. It's not a big deal, but you don't need the added stress. You've got enough in your life, so don't add to it. So if it looks like you're going to go like you hadn't paid the rent or you're paying the rent, but they hadn't cashed that check yet, be sure to get that money out of that account before it goes to $2,001. You might not be audited, but you might, and you really don't want to deal with that. SSI is very particular, and if you run over the 2,000, they will start to take money out of your SSI, out of their SSI account. So be very cognizant of that. The CalAble allows you now to give them money. And I'm going to give you an example. Let's say they're going to a board and care. The board and care is $1,500 a month. SSI allows $1,300, or give or take. Don't quote me on those. So you write a check for the extra $200. Social Security goes, wait a second, you're giving them $200 extra than what they're supposed to have. So we're going to take $100 out of that. Now you're writing a check for $300 because they've just lowered their SSI to $1,200. So if you have to write a check for something like that, do it through CalAble. You can put your money in the CalAble, don't put a whole lot in there, and you can write checks through CalAble, and it will not affect their SSI, Medi-Cal, anything that they have going on. It will not affect it. The government, California passed this law to make it so that it's more reasonable for people helping their loved ones. Okay, next slide, because I think that is the one Jim's talking about.
Right. So I actually was in a position where the board and care that our son was in was quite good, actually, but it was a lot more money than most board and cares. And I just did what Gail referenced to, is rather than cause him problems by putting too much money into his account to cover the cost or to write sneaky checks and so forth, I set up this Medi-Cal CalAble, excuse me, account. I misspoke. And basically then I was able to take monies out from there to help supplement the cost of the housing. As you can see on the second slide, housing is one of the things that these funds can be used for. Is education. You can buy him a computer so that he can take educational classes. Anything associated with them going to work, or any sort of health assistance and so forth. Again, it says assistive technology, again, whether that's the internet, setting up their cable, setting up a new computer, all these things can be paid for under this CalAble process without penalizing him. So you can, the goal is that you're wanting to build up the funds, and that's so that that might pay for things along the way, but then it could also be used at a later time, which is why they will allow you to allow them to invest it. Actually, I think there's some smarter ways to invest monies than what they do, but that's another story. Anyway, these are all things, and this is just part of the list. It's an extensive list. So I would suggest that you go to the CalAble account and look at this. It's worth looking at, that's for sure. Next slide. Gail?
The LPS Conservatorship of the estate. If you need it of the estate, you can negotiate debts that they have. Run a credit report on Credit Karma. It's a freebie. And you know their social security number. And you can call the creditors. They will need a copy of your conservatorship. But you can negotiate 10 cents, 25 cents on the dollar, assuming they have money to work with. If they don't have any money, then you can close like a credit card account. You can close that account. As far as you're concerned, if they run a judgment against them, don't worry about it. In 3 years, it will be taken off their credit report. So you can negotiate their debts, deal with all their debts, whatever they have. If they have criminal court cases, this gives you the power to be able to sign the papers, work with everybody to get the treatment that they need in the court, which is pretty much those jail diversion programs, which are really wonderful because they'll treat them for 2 years. Having them under the LPS is important because it's like an insurance policy. They go off their medication. Oh, guess what? You're going to use 53, 58.5. Get them in the hospital, get them back on their medication, and they will be successful on their jail diversion program, which at the end of that time, many of them are completely dismissed. Some are just brought down to a little misdemeanor and nothing more than like a traffic ticket or something, not a big deal. You can acquire a waiver for school loans. This is really important. A lot of people owe school loans. You can get a waiver for their school loans, and if they don't work, or well, they can work some, but if they're still in the poverty level, which most likely they will be, for the next 3 years, that loan will be totally dismissed. So that's an important thing that's very helpful. You can cancel your credit cards, which I mentioned earlier. If you need it, the conservatorship of the estate, it is not the doctor who can initiate the LPS conservatorship of the estate. It has nothing to do with that. It's you go through the public guardian or you write a letter to the court, Superior Court, for hearing, and you can get those hearings within about 7 to 10 days. Go to the court, Your Honor, these are the debts I have, or he has. I need to be able to deal with them, or whatever the situation is. And the judge will give you the conservatorship of the estate. Now, if you are the conservator and you've been assigned the conservatorship papers, when you are in court, ask the judge to assign you an attorney. So anything, and it doesn't have to be the conservatorship of the estate, it can also be of the person. The court can assign you an attorney that should you have a legal question, you have somebody that you can call to for free to get the advice or get whatever answers you need. So be sure you have that in your pocket. You need to have an attorney to be able to ask questions when needed. All right, Jim, do you want to add anything?
No, not actually. I think you've covered it well. Thank you.
Okay, next slide. The conservator must have the court's approval for all invasive medical treatment, even giving them a shot, because that enters the body inside. You can't do that. You can't pull a tooth. You have to have the court's approval, and it's not a big deal to have that. Now, in an emergency, that's a whole different ballgame. But any invasive medical treatment that needs to be done must have the court's approval. And you have to, when you get the conservatorship, inform the court of all medical problems the person has. If you haven't done that and you need to do this, just request if you've gotten your attorney, they take care of that problem for you. Just request that these medical things have to be done, and you can get that done in a few, 7 to 10 days. Again, they're pretty quick about all this stuff. So you want to be able to have control of the medical problems should they need that, if they have to have special medicine. Now, you cannot put them in any of these. They'll have like special groups where you can sign up and be a volunteer, for them to be a volunteer in some sort of study or research program. They are not allowed to take any research medicine. It has to be approved. All right. Jim, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, there's actually a family here in Orange County. The daughter, who was older, had a very aged mother, and it turned out that she needed an operation on her stomach with a very serious medical problems. And unfortunately, in the training that she got from, allegedly, from the public guardian's office did not cover this point. She went ahead and had allowed the doctors to have the operation. And then the public defender's office came after her and demanded to the courts that she lose her conservatorship. And I didn't hear the final outcome on that. But they, if they find out, if the wrong party finds out, you're in deep trouble. Interestingly enough, I went to a LPS attorney and asked them if I needed to get the Power 12's agreement from the courts to have a tooth pulled out recently. And he said, no, just general things that's going to go on. And I risked it because it was hurting him so bad, and it was just had to come out. But that's a risk to take that I don't recommend to anybody. I was sweating bullets, and nobody heard that, by the way. But yeah, be careful. Please go to the public guardian's office directly and inform them of your intentions and ask them if you need the Power 12 or not agreement, or go to the courts. And to be honest with you, I don't know where in the court to go. Gail, do you have some idea what division of the court you should go to?
We just go to the Superior Court where the LPS was granted. We go directly to that court. But in LA, be sure if you have to have a tooth extracted, you get their permission. Now, if this tooth is hurting them like Jim's son, then in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer,
No,
that is more like an emergency situation.
No.
I mean, you don't want them having a pain in their mouth for 7 to 10 days
Right.
till you can get this done. But usually invasive situations, they can get done in one day. And if you have that court-appointed attorney, that attorney's in court the next day saying, Your Honor, we have to have this. And they grant it. They're pretty good about granting these things. So be sure you ask for that court. And if you don't have one, go back and ask, just put it in writing that you want to have an attorney assigned to you, a panel attorney assigned to you, should you have any problems, concerns, or whatever. Because the attorneys get that information in the court the very next day, if not the same day. Okay?
You bet.
Next slide.
Next slide.
Medical emergency, we talked about that. All non-emergency invasive procedures must be approved by the court. No experimental treatment is permitted, and you request all medical issues to be approved by Department A. So when you're getting your conservatorship, if they have diabetes, at that point, you get that approved. But if during the year they find out that they have a diabetic problem, you can go back and get that done. Okay, we've covered all that. Next slide. Okay, the conservator, is this your, oh, Jim, go ahead.
Both of us. The conservator had direct contact with the treating doctor. Under the Welfare Institution Code 5328.1, you have the right for prognosis, medication, side effects of medications, and to have direct contact with the treating doctor. If the doctor refuses to speak with you, contact Dr. Amanda Ruiz at the number on your screen, 213-712-4111, or that alternate number. Gail, this is really your LA information. So
yes, yes, it is. So if you don't know that, contact Jim for Orange County.
Yeah, okay.
That was an easy answer.
Sly.
Next slide. A lot of times you will have a facility will say, well, you don't talk to the doctor. No, that is not the law. So they have to talk with you. Yeah. Okay. Criminal court cases. If you have a criminal court case, be sure to take that history, symptoms, and gravely disabled information that we talked about yesterday. Take about 4 copies, print it on a pale yellow paper so it stands out among all their white paper, because the attorney will say, well, I can't find it. You can point it out and say, oh, there it is right there. You can ask the public defender, and yesterday we said you don't really want to talk to the public defender too much unless you kind of have to. This is criminal court case we're talking about now. That public defender is a good idea to talk with them. Give them a copy of their history, symptoms, and gravely disabled. Contact, before you even go to court, the court linkage program. That their number's up there, because the court linkage program has one person assigned to different courthouses. Each courthouse has a court linkage person. So you want to find out, let's say you're doing airport court, who is assigned to that program. You call that person first before you even go to court, even on the arraignment. You give them a copy of it, you can email it to them, the history, symptoms, gravely disabled, and make sure they're going to be in court, and give them the person's name. They will be there to help you. The court linkage program opens doors for treatment programs for your loved one. With the public defender, you're going to request a jail diversion or a misdemeanor diversion program. They have 1,001 different titles for all these jail diversions. So whatever they have is fine. Those programs are good. It keeps them in treatment for 2 years and for 18 months to 2 years. And like I said earlier, at the end of that time, if they're successful, the case can be dismissed. But you have lost the power, some of your powers, the power for placement. The criminal court has the first right for placement for treatment. You can give your suggestion and what you feel is appropriate, but criminal court has the right to say, no, they will go here. So that's one of the things that, will take place. Jim, do you want to add anything for Orange County?
No, it's so similar, Gail. It's no sense going over that. I feel it's the same.
All right, next slide. Whose is this?
We don't know.
Okay.
It looks like a G.
Yeah, it does look the top of the G. Okay. If any of what we're talking about is over in the corner, we put the page numbers and we put a J or G. So Jim and I know who's going to take that slide. And that's what we're referring to. They had them covered up earlier and I'm going, oh, shoot, which one is that? Okay, possible treatment programs. Now, this is referring to Los Angeles. Orange County has some too, and things are constantly changing. So we're trying to keep this information current as possible as we can. The LPS Conservatorship is the strongest. If your loved one doesn't feel that they're ill, you have a problem and everybody else does, it's a good program. And if they refuse medication, LPS is probably the way to go. The assisted outpatient treatment is really good. Linda Boyd, who spoke yesterday, she's an amazing supervisor, and the program is only as good as your supervisor is. She makes things happen. She's very creative whenever we have a problem that doesn't fit, the little boxes don't fit in the square pegs or whatever. She has helped with a lot of cases, very unusual cases. But assisted outpatient, you cannot have that if their person's under the LPS. It's one or the other. AOT cannot mandate medication. The judge can say, this is what you're going to take. But if they don't take it, they don't have that 53.5 to put them in the hospital and get the medication started. But we don't tell our clients that. Okay, Care Court is another one that's very good. It's just now getting, revved up. They're doing a very good job on that. I can't say a whole lot about that, but when it comes to the home team, the next one, that's for homeless people. And the feedback I'm getting on home team has been unbelievable. They're getting LPS conservatorships right and left. And the families that are calling me where their kids are homeless on the street, they get the LPS while they're on the street. Now, the reason why, and these are all new programs, Care Court, Home Team, those are new. The reason why we want them in the hospital or in jail when you do the LPS is because if the person doesn't show up in court, the case is dismissed. So it used to be when they were on the street, of course, they're not going to go to court. They don't show up in court, the case is dismissed. So nobody would do an LPS when they were homeless on the street. Now with this home team, the evaluator, the psychiatrist will go and work with them, and they have a different write-up. If they don't show up in court, the evaluator goes to the court, they talk about it, and they can still get them under the LPS. And when they're under the LPS, they can mandate that treatment. So we've had really good success with the home team. The last one is full service partnership. You didn't hear this from me, but many times that's much ado about nothing. So what can I say? Those first four are wonderful. Your chances of the recovery for the loved one is pretty good. Full service partnership if they have a mental health problem. And there is a difference between mental health, which is, I'm not up to par today kind of thing, and serious mental illness. Serious mental illness, those top four are the way to go. Okay. Jim, do you want to add anything?
Well, I could say something about FSP, but then I'll probably get flack for it. So
I'm sure I will too.
Yeah. All right.
Shakespeare. What was that? Much ado about nothing, Shakespeare. Next slide.
Next slide, quickly. Okay, Jim and Gail, medications. It's not easy to know all about medications because if you're new to these medications, you don't know what they do, you don't know their impact, you don't know what their side effects are. What's a normal dosage? Is the doctor overprescribing? So one of the things you can do is to go to a website, and I'm blanking out on the name. Don't get old, your mind goes.
www.drugs.com.
Drugs.com, of course it is. I was just going to reference my phone because I keep it right on my phone. And in there, it is a doctor's peer review website that all the medications and everything written about those medications in that website are peer reviewed by doctors, medical doctors, to make sure that what's on there is accurate and that it's just, giving you good information and so forth. It's a lifesaver. You can, one of the things that I did was I typed up my son's, I just shouldn't even bring that up, but one of my conservatees medications. I will type up the medications and then I will go into the website and one by one, I will select them, type in the medication name. It will bring up everything about that. What are the normal dosages? What are the side effects? What are the warnings? Who is the audience that medication is targeted for? How is it sometimes effective for other target individuals and so forth? It's incredible. And then I print that out and I set up a tabbed notebook binder and I put the tabs with a medication name on it. I put all the printouts on there and everything I need to know about that medication is there. When I have to sit down in front of the doctor, I have all the medications there. I can talk about them. I can reference to anything within that will talk about that medications. It's a real godsend. So basically it's write in your journal the date of medications and the behaviors. I'm getting some overlap here with my not being, there we go, I fixed it. No. The slides showing, Enrique, the slides is a little bit to the right, and is it possible to move it over? If not, anyway, it's cutting off. Maybe I can slide this thing over. There it is. Write the journal dates and medications and behaviors. This is incredibly important. As time goes on, you can always go back to your notes and you can have a good feel for what's going on. I mentioned this earlier that, should you down the road at some point come up with a new doctor and they are recommending medications, you can go back through your journals, look at the medications, and then you can say, oh, yeah, that's right. We had a glitch with that, or something was in conflict with another medication or what have you. It's all there. So you want to find the best medication for clarity of mind. Which one really was the most helpful prescribed medication with the least side effects? It's nice to have a medication that's going to help you with clarity of mind, but not if the side effects make you lethargic and overweight and causing all kinds of other problems along the wayside. Then if those are coming up, you want to work with the doctor to maybe come up with an alternate medication that might possibly work a little bit better and achieve the same results for clarity of mind. So
Right.
throw something in there.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, let me at it. Go for it. You go, girl.
Okay. As conservator, many people will call me and they're the conservators, and they'll start telling me something about their loved one. And I go, well, what medications are they on? Well, I don't know. As conservator, you should know. And if you don't know, then you're not doing a very good job as a conservator. Now, I'm not PC and I'm not politically correct on what I'm saying, but you should know what medications your loved one's taking. You want to know the side effects of the medication. Look it up on that drugs.com. The dosages, the high and low dosage, what dosage are they taking, when they're taking it, morning, night, or whatever. That is imperative to know that. Remember, the key for the recovery of your loved one is the medication. The brain needs that chemical component to make those neurons, the neurons, to connect with the proper neuron. So the messages going back and forth are going to make sense. If they don't have that chemical in their brain, they don't make sense. And God bless you, because then you have to tolerate them. And that's not fun. Keep in mind, what medication works for one does not necessarily work for another. So if you talk to the doctor, you have to be politically correct on this when you're talking to the doctors. Doctors are gods, and they expect you to treat them as such. So if you're saying, well, doctor, my 3 friends' kids are on a certain medication, I want to put mine on it. You don't do that. The doctors, your kid is an individual. Well, that might work for them, but not for your loved one. So you can't do that. But what you can say is, I've been reading about this medication, and I think it may be helpful for my loved one. What do you think if we start him on a small dosage, and I'll give you the feedback, what I'm seeing from him? Doctors like that, because you're doing the work and you're telling them what you think. That's really important. Keep that information in your journal, and keep in mind you're looking for clarity of mind with the least side effects. Okay, now I'm going out on a limb. When you're doing medications, you want to use the scientific method that you learned back in school. You change one variable at a time. For instance, the doctor's got them on 5 different medications, and which really is questionable. You don't take them off of 2 or 3, because maybe one of those was working. You titrate slowly off of one at a time. Or like if you're putting them on medications, you titrate slowly, increasing it one at a time. But if you can find one medication that works the best for your loved one, then if you have to increase it to get better effects, fine. That's what you do. But if a doctor's prescribed 4 or 5 psychotropics, and we had one doctor prescribe 13 psychotropics.
Oh.
At the time, I didn't even know we had 13. We do now, but then, and I called the CEO of the hospital. He took care of that problem immediately. I hate to say it, a lot of psychiatrists get nice trips to the Bahamas for prescribing certain medications. So their interest is not in your loved one, but what can I put in my bank account kind of thing. So you really want to be sure you are watching these medicines, and don't expect that doctor to be doing there are a few really good doctors who will work very hard with you to get your loved ones. Now, I'm going to give you the medications that when people call me and their loved ones still hearing voices and having delusions, and they're not really getting better, I can guarantee you, in fact, I tell the people, okay, they're probably on this, 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 and this. And they go, yeah, those are fine for a person who has a mental health problem. Your loved one has a serious mental illness. It's like a migraine. You have a migraine and I say, take my Tylenol, it'll help you. It won't phase your migraine. The same thing. Depakote, Ativan, Seroquel, Zyprexa blows you up like a balloon. I mean, and it doesn't really give you a lot of clarity of thinking. And I'm giving you the feedback that I get from families over 25 years. I've had one family where Zyprexa helped their loved one. That's not a pretty good record of Zyprexa. They're very delusional, psychotic, everything. Abilify helps those that have a mental health problem. It's not a bad medication, but it really doesn't tend to help those with serious mental illness. All right, the medications that tend to help those with serious mental illness, and please keep in mind what works for one doesn't work for another. And I am not recommending, I am suggesting you work with the doctor on these. Invega, INVEGA. You look it up on the internet, learn all about it. If you have questions, call the pharmaceutical company. They will educate you with a lot of things. I would say, in my experience, about 85% of the people have good results with the Invega. Latuda, L-A-T-U-D. Oh, let me go back to Invega. Invega comes in what they call a Sustaina, which you can give it once a month. I don't suggest that you start them on an injection right away, because if it has negative side effects for them, that's in their body. It starts out with a small little pill, 3 milligrams or whatever it is. And they can try that. You can increase it. And if it's working, then you do then you can go to the shot. So once a month shot. Invega is the same chemical composition as risperidol. Risperidol is a fairly good, except it's how these two medications are delivered to the system. They're both made by the same company. Risperidol goes to the cell and all the organelles in the cell. So each organelle is sending out a different little message. Invega goes predominantly to the nucleus of the cell. So the message is a lot clearer. Now, if they're on risperidol and they're not doing well and there's a problem, you have tardive dyskinesia where they have loss of control of certain body parts or whatever, you don't want to do Invega because their chemical compositions are the same. But if they do well on risperidol, you might try Invega. It may work a little bit better. Generally, the feedback that I get, they're more motivated, they're not so tired, more clarity of thinking, they feel a lot better. Now, that's just the feedback that I get that I'm sharing with you. Because keep in mind, we share with you what gives you the greatest probability of success for your loved ones. Latuda, L-A-T-U-D-A, tends to work. I've had one young man where he didn't recognize his mother. And after he started Latuda, he says, I know you. You're my adoptive mother. And then after he was on it a bit longer, Mom, where did you come from? It just gave him more clarity of thinking. Vraylar, That's spelled VRAYLAR. Now, my knowledge at this time is it's still not in an injection as a sustainer, but people who have negative symptoms of schizophrenia, that's where things are taken from you. You're like the walking zombie. Vraylar, to my understanding, is the only medication that helps with those negative symptoms as well as the positive, where they get, you get the delusions and the visuals and the voices and all that. That's the positive. Vraylar is a pretty good one. Caplyta, CAPLYTA. It's made in New York, good pharmaceutical company. And I don't have anybody in California under that. I'm in Florida presently. And I will tell you, the psychiatrists that I've talked to, they love it. They swear by it. They say it's really made a change. So I don't know what to tell you on that one. I haven't had any families that have told me, just the psychiatrist. And they're not getting trips to the Bahamas. So if that helps on some of those medications, they're coming up with newer medications. And I mentioned earlier, they're working in the research program on blood test, so that if somebody can take a blood test and find out if they have schizophrenia, and if this comes to pass, they're hoping to have the research completed in about 4 to 6 more months. If that comes to pass, hopefully that will change how we deal with schizophrenia. Another thing, if a person has chronic depression, there's a procedure that they can have done, transcranial magnetic stimulation. And they put like a little cap on their head, and they just do a little electrode modes, which goes, that's all they hear. But they stimulate the activity in the brain so that they're not so depressed. They get more of the chemicals, serotonin, and all these chemicals going to make the person a happier person. It's a good one to look into. They're having great results. The government's come out with a program for the veterans for PTSD to do that, as well as hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Those are other procedures that are non-invasive that really tend to help a person, okay? The scientific method, change one variable at a time. I mentioned that earlier. Find the best medication that works the best with the least side effects, and keep that journal. You've got a job to do. Being a conservator is very important. Now, if the public guardian is the conservator, they are not given the pay grade to tell the doctor, hey, we don't want this medication. But if they notice there's a problem, they can ask for a medication review. So can you. You ask the court for a medication review. And those are pretty helpful, because too many doctors put them on the wrong medications. And you, as a conservator, you're going to diplomatically encourage the doctor to do the right medication. We spent a lot of time, but this is the key for the recovery of your loved one. All right, Jim, you want to add anything?
Gail, you've just nailed it. I really, I'm not going to talk about medications. That's not my thing.
Okay. All right. Next slide. Is that you or me, Jim?
I have no clue. Well, I see a G behind the little sign down there.
Formulary for medications.
Both of us.
Oh, this is important. A lot of facilities will tell you, well, this medication is not on the formulary. The formulary is no big deal. It's one sheet of paper. The doctor writes, we've tried these medicines, we've done this. We would like to do this medication. They act like it's, they have to write a thesis to have that medication used on the formulary. It's just certain medications are not, some insurance companies say, okay, well, we're not going to do this. But if that's the one that helps your loved one, then you want the doctor to write a formulary, and they're pretty much almost always granted, so that your loved one can have that medication and it can be paid for by insurance. So the other thing that you can do is ask the treating doctor if they have free samples to try a new medication. So you can try it. If it doesn't work, hey, no big deal, you're done. Okay, because they start them on a low dosage. If you see negative effects that you don't like, they can go off of it. You can also, let's see, the free samples. You can, if the doctor doesn't have the free samples, you can call the pharmaceutical company, find out who the representative person is in that, the pharmaceutical representative is for that area, and have them deliver free samples to the doctors. So there's a lot of ways that you can get your loved one medications that you might like to try, and you're working with the doctor to see if he's willing to help you with that. You seek the medications that help a person with serious mental illness. Now, this is important. Do not settle for just okay. You want your loved one back to their old self. Pull up the old family albums. Look and remember what they were like. Were they funny? Were they fun? Were they gregarious? Were they outgoing? Find out what your loved one was like, and that's your goal, to get them back to that person as much as possible. Might not get them back to the, totally, but you're going to work to get them back to that. Don't settle when the doctor says, oh, this is the best you're going to do. Find another doctor. That's a doctor that doesn't really care and isn't willing to try a lot of other things. And believe me, doctors do that. We had a case where the girl was on these medications. The mom asked them to put them on. Actually, at the time, it was in Vega. And he goes, it doesn't matter what medication she's on. They're all the same. It's not going to make any difference. And she kept on. He says, I'm going to put her on it. You're going to see it's all the same. And you find another doctor. That girl's been working for 20 years. She's about ready to retire. A world of difference. You cannot imagine the difference. This kid, it was so sick. A world of difference. Her mom found another doctor anyway. So, just don't settle and keep data in your journal. Okay, Jim?
No, I really won't get into formularies, but one of the things that I think that anybody should be aware of is the fact that all our medications are made either in India and also China.
Fine.
And it's been proven, there's books on it actually, that talks about the fact that they don't find the Chinese and other countries that manufacture medications actually don't follow the guidelines and so forth that the drug manufacturers here, or the drug companies here, give to them. And of course, when they go there for inspections to inspect their facilities, then they whip everything up so it looks really good. And as soon as the inspectors are gone, they go back to business as usual. So a generic formulary is not going to be as good as the original medication that was prescribed, but we have to deal with what is available to us. And so if that's what the doctors are going to prescribe, then we're going to have to work with that. As Gail said, keep a journal, keep track of what's working and what's not. And that's about as much as I want to throw in there. Anything else?
Yeah, and Jim talked about the China and the India, and he's right about that. I would like to see all of our medications made in America. There's no reason that they're not. But something else to be aware of, especially in California with your earthquakes, if you have a catastrophe, you want to have medication on hand to cover you for 2 weeks to a month, if possible. So if you can store up little medication, especially the pills, you can't store up a shot, but get some of these and keep them on hand. So if there is a problem, you're somewhat covered with your loved one in a catastrophe. I'm from Louisiana. When we had Katrina, we were Lafayette, which was between Katrina and Rita, but we had people coming to Lafayette, and our doctors were wonderful. They were writing prescriptions, what color pill was that you took? What was it for? And this and that. And the pharmacies gave everybody free medications for 3 months, which was really good. I don't know if California would do the same when you have a catastrophe, but if you can store up a little extra medication, it's not a bad thing to do. Okay, next slide.
So this talks about placing a conservatee in a treatment facility. The intensive care division of the Department of Mental Health evaluates and suggests where the person should be placed. As a conservator, you want to tour every facility and ask questions. As a conservator by law, your request for placement for a replacement facility must be honored as best as possible. Right on every contract, your express written permission must be given for any change in medication, treatment, and placement. And this is where I always talk about this company, Energel Liquidy. You want to find a good fine tip point pen like this. And basically, when you go in, when your loved one's hospitalized and they put down your permission to treat for you to sign, you right underneath all the stuff, or right in between the lines, that you do not waive your rights as a conservator, and that, as Gail said, your express written permission must be given for any change in medication. If you just signed, yes, go ahead and provide this medication, they may be talking about one medication. By the time they get through filling that medication, it might be a different medication that you're not aware of, because you didn't make the statements that's on the slide in front of you. So it's very important that you do that. And if they say, well, what are you writing? Just say, I'm just looking out for my rights as a conservator, making sure that they stay in place. I don't give the hospital carte blanche to just throw any medication that they choose to throw at my conservatee. Next slide.
No, well, let me just say, when you sign those contracts giving permission to the facilities to treat your loved one, they interpret that you've just given them your right as a conservator. They will do whatever they want, and they don't even consult you. That's why you put this on that contract. It's very important so that they know you are the conservator, even though you've given them your papers. They must have your written express permission to change medications, transport them to another facility, and treatment. So it's really important for that. Okay.
So if you can do a screenshot, and if you have an Apple, you can press down Command Shift 4 all at the same time, and then drag your cursor from the top corner all the way down. It will select all of this text for you. Or if you have the ability to do a screen capture, try to capture this information. So we'll just hold it here for a few more seconds while you do that. But this is a great guideline that Gail has written up, and it's very, very important to follow. Okay, next slide.
Placement and treatment via the hospital. That's you, Jim.
Oh, shame on me. Well, okay. The placement and treatment via hospital. The hospital requests intensive care division, ICD, to evaluate conservatee for placement. The person can only be transferred to a lockdown facility to another lockdown facility. Institute for Mental Disease, IMD, is a lockdown facility for the hospital will first discharge the patient. As the patient improves, they might skip the IMD and be discharged to an enhanced residential setting, ERS, which is a secure treatment facility, not a lockdown. The concept is that whatever level of care your conservatee is on, you can always move sideways to an alternate treatment facility or down. You can never go up. And so keep that in mind. And one of the things that IMDs are not supposed to do is, if your loved one's in there and they are a handful to deal with, they're not allowed to just dump them out. They're supposed to consult with you that they want to move him and so forth, and contact the Department of Mental Health stating that they're wanting to move him to a different location. I just had my son moved out of an IMD, and they literally dumped him into the CSU, where they do mental health evaluations only, and they don't have sufficient beds to hold people for any period of time. But thank you, Pomona IMD, you did that. I'm probably going to file a grievance against you. Don't let them do that to you. Just, I didn't, by the time I found out what they were going to do, he was already in progress. You need to stand your rights on that. So this is all very important information. Next slide. Treatment and placement via jail. Generally, yeah, this is interesting. Generally, if your loved one's going to be put into a state mental hospital, they're going to be in Patton or Metropolitan. Typically what happens is, and I'll give you an example of one family without names, is that their daughter, oh, I can't believe what goes on in our systems here in Orange County sometimes. The public defender said that her daughter, who was on conservatorship, had a treatment plan, and that she was going to stay with these people that would make sure that she had a place to stay and make sure she took her meds and so forth. Well, the two people, one was a relative and said, I'll only let her stay here if she stays on conservatorship. And the other one was themselves mentally ill and living on the streets. Through the misrepresentation, the courts then assigned her to the person who was ill and living on the streets. She decompensated. She was a black belt. She got into a big argument with an Uber driver. She assaulted him, was arrested, and they shipped her off to Patton. Patton is like way up almost by the San Francisco area. When your loved one goes into these hospitals, they don't go by geographic location. They go by first availability. They used to go by geographic location, but there were a lot of complaints that their loved one, like for an example, if we're here in Los Angeles area and your loved one is going to be sent to a hospital, they used to send them right here to the Norwalk hospital, the state mental hospital. Well, gee, not anymore. If the first opening's Patton, off they go. So this mother is having to drive all the way up to Northern California, and thank gosh she has a friend there. Well, let's just spend the night in her home. But it's just really a big problem. But they are basically held in these state mental hospitals until they are of clear enough mind to be held accountable for their crime in a court of law. They have to gain enough insight that they realize that their crime was in fact wrong, and then they hold them accountable for that by holding a trial and then having a trial on the crime later. I think it's wrong, but anyway, that's basically what happens. And I believe that whole process involves what's called a Murphy conservatorship, which we don't really talk about in our meetings, but it does apply to the individuals that are on their way to Patton or Metropolitan State.
The Murphy conservatorship, if somebody's in jail and they keep trying to get them competent to be able to stand trial. Now, we kind of almost don't do those anymore because we have other programs.
Right.
But they will try for 3 years. Well, that's ridiculous. A person to be mentally ill to be in jail for 3 years.
Yeah.
Then they will do a Murphy conservatorship. If your loved one's off the conservatorship and they end up in jail, contact that treating doctor at the jail, give them the history, symptoms, gravely disabled, and ask them to initiate the LPS conservatorships. These doctors at the jail tend to do that pretty quickly. So try and get that done. Now, if they're just in jail for a night or two, there's no way they're going to get that done. But if you can, that's the way to go. And like Jim's talking about going to the various hospitals, the law is they're supposed to put them in a facility near you. The state doesn't follow the laws. I mean, they just do whatever they want on whatever laws they want to deal with. So it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Okay, next slide.
And I will add that when somebody has an eating disorder, our state laws mandate that the board and carers then accommodate those eating disorders and make sure that they're properly fed and that they receive sufficient care. The Patton State Mental Hospital is not doing that. The patients are cold. They have painful sores on their body that the doctors are not attending to. It's not a great place. So know that if you're headed for that. Right now, we're writing to the governor of the state, and they come back and say, oh, well, what did you want us to do? Hello, fix it? But it's just very frustrating what goes on in our mental health system. It's just frustrating. The whole thing is mental health in itself is such a horrible disease, and when your loved one comes down with it, it's bad enough that we have to deal with that, and we do all that we can to help them get through it. But then to see something like a state mental hospital not care for them, that really raises the red flag. Something's really wrong with their care systems here in the state. And we need to get together, join with your NAMIs, make your voices heard, get involved with your legislatures, as we mentioned earlier. All right, I'm sorry. Next slide.
Advocate.
Advocate is, yes.
Mhm.
Next slide.
That's your-
Okay, sorry. I get on my rampage here, forgive me. So, gosh. Okay, so normal movement through treatment facilities. If they're in an IMD, Institute for the Mentally Ill or Mental Disease, also known as a locked down facility, they also have enhanced resident. I can't even talk. The last 2 days have been really messed up. Enhanced residential settings, ERS, it's a secure facility. Board and cares, it's the least restrictive. So we're going from the most restrictive down. Board and cares are least restrictive. They provide food, they provide a bed, a roof over their head, and they make sure they take their medications twice a day. The ERS has a higher level of care, and they supply nurses and so forth to watch over them. Going from lockdown hospital to jail to lockdown, again, as we said before, they have to move from sideways. They can't go up, they go sideways or down. Conservatee may skip a facility and go to a less restrictive facility as they improve their recovery. So they don't have to follow the sequence. They can skip one if they're really improving in their clarity of mind. And as long as they're not a flight risk, then they can move them down to a less restrictive environment where it's not locked. Kiddo?
They can even go into an apartment, their own apartment, Section 8 housing, whatever. So it's not always in treatment facilities. They get their benefits back.
Right.
Okay.
And some people have capacity to do that. They regain clarity of mind and they stay on their meds every day and they go to work and they're just a great citizen like all the rest of us. And that's success. But some people don't have that capacity, and you don't dare put them into a apartment or a place where there's an oversight, especially with meds. So kind of know what you're dealing with before you move somebody to a different facility. Okay, I'm done. Next slide. Thank you.
Who is that?
Looks like a G.
The doctor can request that you be removed as a conservator. If you're keeping who you talk to and all the information that you need, the doctor really can't do that. But keep in mind, you can also change doctors. But sometimes, like if they're in a hospital and the doctor's trying to work with you and you are unreasonable, they can go to court quickly and have you removed as the conservator. So you really want to be diplomatic when you work with the doctors. You have to be reasonable. But you can also keep in mind, you can change a doctor. If you're working with a private doctor or somebody and you don't like that doctor for whatever reason, you can change the doctors. That's your prerogative as a conservator. All right, next slide. Who is that?
Well, that's really way down there. I haven't.
I have no idea.
Well, go for it, Gail.
Okay, conservatee's loss of rights. Temporarily, restrictions for the conservatee is the right to drive a car. This is when the LPS is granted. The right to enter contracts and to determine where they live. Those they lose right away. The more permanent restriction is the right to shoot and possess guns. And I believe that's federal, and that's like for 5 years or something like that. While they are under the conservatorship, they can regain the right to drive a car. They can regain the right to enter contracts. And sometimes if they're doing jobs, they might have to be able to write contracts or sign contracts. And as they get better, they can determine where they live. Some people choose to be under the conservatorship for however long they want, because if they've gotten a job, they're successful, they're doing well, they're afraid that for whatever reason, they might choose to go off their meds and they'll decompensate. They don't want to lose everything that they've gained and go back and start from ground one. So they request to stay under the conservatorship. Not everybody does, but they do, and they'll tell the doctor, I'm gravely disabled, write it up. But just to do that. We did have one person who hired an attorney to get him so that he could shoot and possess a gun, and there was a good reason for it. But that was the only one that I've ever heard of. Most people don't want them to possess a gun or to be shooting a gun, and chances are you don't want your loved one to do that either.
Right.
All right, next slide. Reinstate the rights, the right to drive a car. If you feel your loved one is ready to drive a car and needs it for a job, for whatever reason, you can write a letter to the doctor stating why you feel the conservatee should drive. The doctor fills out a form. It's not a big deal. It's in that booklet that we told you about at the beginning. So, and they submit it to the court. The court approves the right to drive. Give it back to Department of Motor Vehicles. They evaluate the conservatee and they approve the right for the person to start driving again. And it's not a big deal that they have it's a safety hearing or something like that. It's really not a big deal. They just ask them their name, rank, and serial number kind of thing. And then they can go back and they can start driving a car. Entering contracts, you just request the court to reinstate the right for them to enter contracts. When they first are under the conservatorship, you really don't want them entering contracts. And I've mentioned this before. We had one fellow that went to Vegas, married 3 girls in one night. All those were annulled because he didn't have the right to enter contracts. Or to, how they'll send out, sign here and you'll have $5,000 in credit from whatever company or whatever it is. We've had people do that, sign, get the money. They didn't have the right to enter the contract. So you can go back to the company and say, sorry, Charlie, you're out of luck. So that's, those are things that come later. Next slide. Or Jim, did you want to add anything?
No, but whoever that guy was, he must have been darn good looking, or these gals were really drunk if he got all 3 of them to marry him the same night. Holy cow.
3 of them. 3 of them. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Okay, I'll jump in here on this slide here on the renewal of conservatorship. You want to start the renewal process 3 months early. I cannot tell you how many times I get families calling me and saying, oh my gosh, I almost don't have enough time. Holy cow. You don't want to do that. You don't want to lose your conservatorship. Some families have lost their conservatorship because, when the conservatorship is granted, you want to just almost tattoo on your forehead so you see it in the mirror every day. Go to a calendar, go to your journal, go to some place where you have to look at a calendar, cell phone, whatever it is, and put down, backtrack 3 months and then make a notation, time to get the renewal process started for conservatorship. You need the declaration signed. For those of you in Orange County, if you don't know where to go to get your renewal papers, call me, contact me. I have them on my file downloaded from the courts. I can send them to you and you can go ahead and get them started. But don't wait till the last minute. That's the biggest thing that I can tell you. Now, with that in mind, there have been times when people go in just a little bit prior to the expiration date and they go into the court and they ask for it to be renewed. They will set an extension in place for a hearing that is after the expiration date of the conservatorship. Your conservatorship will stay intact up until that court date, and then it's going to be decided whether it goes forward, renewed or not. But don't do that. Our public defenders have had a field day with that, where they really try to get the courts to null the conservatorship altogether because they've gone past that date. That's not going to happen to you, but make the big effort. Put something down on your calendar. That's the biggest thing I can stress to you. If you don't know where to go, call Gail, call me, in Orange County.
Yeah, that's the other thing. That's why you have that court assign you an attorney. The attorney can help you with this process.
Yeah.
The other thing is Jim saying the court will. Most judges, mental health judges will, but we've had some judges in LA that I didn't particularly care for. And if you went in a week beforehand, they say no, they didn't care.
Wow.
So they really didn't believe in involuntary mental health treatment. So, and they were releasing people whenever they could. So it depends on the judge, whether the judge is going to agree with that or not. Don't take chances. It's not worth it.
And just so you know, you can't represent yourself in the mental health court. You're going to go in there and try to talk to the judge and convince him that your loved one needs to stay on a conservatorship. They won't allow that. So you want to make sure that you have an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, then you need to contact. There's Sandra Skane that is very helpful in that. But there again, she's lost some of her capacity here in Orange County to help families unless they're of a certain age, because she's now working for a nonprofit group that funds her. Chapman University used to give her funding that allowed her then to get paid while she worked through all these cases in the courts, and that's been lost. So definitely the court now, the Orange County Court, has asked for some of the LPS mental health attorneys to volunteer, and they will assist you through that process of going through the renewal in the courtroom. Okay, next slide.
Let me take it. Gravely disabled. The thing that the court is looking for is, can they provide their shelter, their food, and their clothing? And we say add safety or health risk. So in a safe manner or where it's not a health risk. And you only need one, but we try to get all three if we can. And yesterday we talked about how you get all three: shelter, they cannot come and live at home safely; food, they've lost significant weight from not eating or compulsive eating. That could also be it. Clothing, they wear their clothes for excessive periods of time. Don't say 2 weeks or something like that, excessive. Let them determine what that definition is. Or they take their clothes off at inappropriate times and places, or they dress inappropriate for the weather. So that's your gravely disabled that you really try to hit. The state does not care how crazy a person is. If they do not meet gravely disabled, you're up a gump stump. Jim, you want to add anything?
Well, it's not directly related to the renewal process, but also in terms of gravely disabled and so forth, there was one time where a gentleman was on an insulin pump and stopped taking. He had shut it off himself. I guess I don't know that much about insulin pumps. I think it's embedded in you or something, but he was able to shut it off. And the family called and said, hey, they're not wanting to take him. But once they realized the situation, that was another situation where the individual then was transported to the hospital. And that's another case that you can add to the mental health history and share with the courts when you're renewing the conservatorship that, hey, just 3 weeks ago, my conservatee shut off their insulin pump, or they were eating foods that were tainted with some chemical or whatever it is. If they're a danger to themselves or cannot provide basic needs, these are all kinds of things that the court wants to hear in making a decision as to renewing the conservatorship or not.
Mm-hmm. The medical, you have to be a little bit careful with the medical, because gravely disabled, it doesn't have in there shutting off their insulin pump. So you have to be careful. That is
helpers.
where a judge may make a difference, and the judge may say, okay, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
But the new gravely disabled, which is not being utilized just yet, does include if they are not able to take care of their medical problems
Yes.
and or they have a substance abuse problem. That will be the new definition of gravely disabled. Call your supervisors and tell them, we want that now, not in 2026. We want it now.
Yeah.
They give you the excuse they don't want to spend the money. That's what it comes down to. And there is money for that. So, but push them for that. Get your friends to call them, bug them till they get tired of hearing from you. Okay, next slide. Whose is it? Yours or mine?
I don't know. I do see a bit of a J showing. So,
Ah,
okay. So conservator's court renewal, court hearing, the judge decides or the jury trial. So what this means is that when you're applying for a conservatorship for your family member, and basically they're going to be held in a treatment facility while this is all going and all being processed. Primarily, it goes from the treating doctor in the hospital contacting the public guardian's office saying, hey, we need to get this person onto conservatorship. They reach out to county council, who then arranges for a court hearing date to take place. And in that interim of time, here in Orange County, we have a forensic psychologist then that will come and observe the person, talk with them, and so forth. And he will end up in a court hearing to testify as to whether or not he thinks this individual should continue on with conservatorship or not. I know in Los Angeles, it's the doctor that has to do that. But when they go into the hearing, the judge is going to ask them, at least in Orange County, well, son or young lady, do you want me to make the final decision as to whether or not you'll remain on conservatorship, or would you like to have a jury trial of 12 people make that decision? And they have the legal right. Your conservatee has the legal right to make that decision as to which party is going to make that final decision as to whether or not they stay on it. Okay, next slide. This is a J. Conservator goes AWOL. Wow. You file a missing persons report. Give a copy of your conservatorship paper to the police. And any person with a serious mental illness goes to the top of the missing person list under missing children as a dependent adult. Does not need to be under conservatorship. So I was really involved with outpostforhope.org. It is a nonprofit in Florida, not the other side of the peninsula, Gail, from your location. But nonetheless, for years, she trained people and trained law enforcement how to best find somebody that is a missing person. And so if you go to Outpost for Hope, it will give you everything you need to know on how to file a missing persons report. Not only, and there is one that is only allowed by law enforcement to make an entry into, but there's a secondary database that you can enter your loved one into, as well as a copy of a missing persons flyer. But if you go to Outpost for Hope, you're going to get a plethora of information as to the types of things that you can do to have the best outcomes in relocating your loved one if they go missing. I've dealt with families that had a loved one. They call them frequent flyers. I don't know why they come up with that name, but that's what they often refer to people who have this desire, this burning desire to take off, and they hit the road and they travel. And this one time, this young lady ended up in San Francisco and decompensated, and mom got her back. And then another time, just before COVID, disappeared for the longest period of time, almost a year. Didn't know if they were dead or alive. This is horrible for families to go through. Basically, the filing of a missing persons report is so important. And Gail's going to talk a little bit here about how to best retain a person's DNA, like their hair and so forth. But if you can now today, get a little bit of their hair, or a comb that they've been using or something, because it has their DNA in it. And if your loved one goes missing, and without that DNA, you're not going to know if they're dead or alive. And I actually had one family call me to say that I don't know what you call them, an undertaker or whatever the proper term is, but forensic investigator did a very serious checkup on a Jane Doe, and nobody knew who she was, and he finally determined who she was and contacted the family because they had filed this missing persons and followed the Outpost for Hope guidelines. They were able to let them know at least that their loved one had passed on. So having some DNA on hand is so important. But what's really fantastic is the fact that that reporting can go on immediately. You don't have to wait for them to the law enforcement to file it, or for them to. They're supposed to, in the first 24 hours, do a search for the individual in known places. I think that's it. Gail, you want to talk about the comb and the
Yeah.
hair, that type of thing?
Yeah, when Jim's mentioning the DNA, be sure and try and get the root of the hair. You don't want to jerk it out of their head or something. Well,
I don't know.
you might do that
I'm
too.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Don't put it in a Ziploc and seal it. Put it in an envelope and just close it, because what will happen, you'll get it'll get bacteria in the Ziploc, it'll mold or whatever. But in the other one, you want it to dry out. If you could get a swab of their mouth, that would be the best. And take a photo when you're with them. I don't care what condition they're in. Hey, we want a family photo. You can always block you guys out, but you've got current pictures of them. So keep those current pictures. Sons tend to grow the beards and whatever else. So you've got them without a beard. Gee, they look really good. But the last time you saw them, they had a beard. And if it was my kid, he had blonde hair, red beard, and black beard and black sideburns. I mean, I've never seen so many colors on a kid's head. But take those pictures, keep those pictures current, because those are very, very important. Okay, next slide. Leaving the state of California. LPS conservatorship is very specific for the state of California. California does not have reciprocity with other states. So if your loved one leaves California, you have to get them back, and that's a very difficult thing to do. If you say, oh, well, we're going to go to a wedding, and then he's off and running, you're out of luck, because the state won't help you. We have had cases where we've been able to get people back, but it is not an easy thing to do. So keep them in the state of California if you can. If you decide to go to a wedding or send them to some treatment place in Timbuktu or whatever, get the court's permission for them to leave the state, because when they leave the state, that LPS ends. So if you have the court's permission and they go AWOL and you finally get them back to California, you don't have to redo the LPS. So it just continues as is. Likewise, let's say they go AWOL and you're due for the renewal. The court will give you about 60 days. Sometimes they will continue a little bit more give you time to find them. And that's helpful, but they have to terminate it after a certain period of time. Okay, Jim, anything on this one?
No, other than go to up, excuse me. No, strike that. I was looking at the chat thing. I was on the last slide. Leaving the state of California. Yeah, absolutely. You have covered it thoroughly, Gail. It can't go out without the court's permission.
Okay, next slide.
This is me. Thank you for your determination and your endurance to help your loved one. You know, I have to say that there's a lot of dads and a lot of moms that are such wonderful conservators, such wonderful, even some without conservatorship, that are so supportive of their family members. And it just warms my heart. Unfortunately, um, I've come across so many moms that don't have that. Either they've gone through a divorce and they end up being the caretaker, they're raising other children, they are trying to work, put the groceries on the table, deal with their loved one. They come home and they're up on a balcony screaming, and all the neighbors are coming out saying what's going on. They're getting kicked out of one apartment unit to the next. I call these moms my super moms. And I actually started a mother's group, and unfortunately it fell apart. I guess they thought I was going to run it. I thought they should run it. But I just say, you know, when you think you just can't take any more, and no matter how heavy the load or no matter how heavy the burden, as Gail has written here, when you think you've had enough, you can still give 10% more. It's the Navy SEALs model. It's what they go by. The Navy SEALs have not walked a road, however, and if they had to walk a road, they may say something differently. It's not an easy job. You got to take care of yourself. I've heard this in many different situations where people are caregivers, whether it's for an elderly person or for, in this case, you're dealing with somebody that has a mental health condition. If you're not keeping yourself strong, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you don't pamper yourself a little bit here and there, you ladies, go out and buy that purse. Absolutely get your hair done and have your makeup done. Get your nails done. Take care of yourself. Keep yourself up. You know, this is so critically important, because if you go down and you get depressed and you just try to start avoiding things, your loved one's not going to have a chance. Their strongest chance for recovery is with your assistance. You know, and it may seem like it's never going to end. Mental health is for life, but you know, wow, let me tell you, they do turn the corner. This is what an elderly doctor told me when our son was first diagnosed. It was down in one of the hospitals in Mission Viejo that's long term. And he said, you know, he was retiring. And he said, out of all the years that he'd been a doctor, the ones with their mental health that make it are the ones whose families don't give up on them. So don't give up. And just know, you know, it's always darkest before dawn, before the sun comes up, you know. Don't give up. And we will tell you that our son even has turned the corner here recently. It's like, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. He's gained some insight and realizes he needs to get some help in a certain area that I don't need to bring up to you guys. But wow, you know, be good to yourself. You know, do whatever it takes. Go to your NAMI meetings, get the support there. You know, whatever it takes. And Gail, why don't you throw in things that you can think
Okay.
of?
Yeah, I just want to say, if you get to the point you say, I've had enough, I quit. Don't feel alone. You're normal, like the rest of us.
Yep.
Take time that night, have a cup of tea, a glass of wine, watch a funny movie. A funny movie, even though you've seen it before, you know, My Cousin Vinny or whatever. It just changes your whole attitude. Get a good night's sleep. You're ready to go to battle tomorrow. You really are. But don't feel that you're alone doing that. We've all done that. And that just means that you're normal. Okay, next slide.
So one of the things that we do here, and it's here on the screen, is we ask for your consideration in donating to NAMI Urban Los Angeles. They have been so instrumental in helping so many countless families, not only in Los Angeles, but outside of their jurisdiction. These meetings go on all over the state. Gail and I both have had people call us from out of state. I remember in the very beginning her sharing with me that when they look at the Zoom meeting to see what cities or states or whatever are attending our meetings, we've got people in Africa and Europe watching these meetings. blows me away. NAMI's really taking on the load, NAMI Urban Los Angeles. And if you're on Social Security, you've got a lot of bills over your head, you can barely get ends to meet with the cost of living nowadays and groceries and everything else, don't do it. Please don't do it. But if you can, please do that. And I know yesterday, Araceli talked about the fact that if you go to their website, there is a PayPal place where you can actually donate. And maybe Araceli, if you can hear me, you can speak up on that.
Yes, I
There's-
added it to the chat. It's a direct link. You can go to our
Great.
website and then there's a tab to donate, but I also shared it in the chat. Just you can click it, you can set up an amount if you want it monthly, if you just want it one time, just to add that it's for LPS. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah,
Make sure
do
you
add, go ahead.
make sure you earmark that for the LPS meetings.
That's
And
exactly what I was gonna say. We
Oh,
don't
sorry.
need, yeah, we don't need a lot of money for this
No.
program. This program is the only one offered under NAMI, and NAMI Urban LA is the one that's doing this. And what they've done, when we collect money, they just take out, I mean, like 2% or 1% for admin kind things. So all of our money goes for what we need to do. And Araceli and Enrico are running the Spanish version of
Oh.
this. So we're really thrilled, but we had to pay to have things translated, because the translation, when you're getting to the legal, is a little bit different. There are things that we're doing, but I didn't realize we were getting so low on our money. So if you can donate a little bit, honestly, we would be so grateful. We really would. So, and that would help. And when you call Jim and I for help, I'll guarantee you, we don't charge you for our help. We will, if you need an hour and a half of our time on the phone, you've got it. So, okay. All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Araceli and Rico. I don't know if Harold's there or not, but and Jim, thank you for doing this. You're always so much fun to do this with. He makes a
My pleasure.
difficult topic fun. So